Welcome to Summer Sales School. My name is Karen Kelly. I'm a member of Women's Sales Pro and I'm the founder of K2 Performance Consulting. Now, in this short webinar, I want to talk to you about the importance of running an effective meeting. And you might think, well, why is this important now, Karen? And I would say it's always important, but think about the time we're in now. We're in the last 2 weeks of summer. People are getting those last bit of cottaging, of hanging by the pool and really relaxing in preparation for that back to school feel, that back to basics, and really having back in the office or the virtual office, having meetings and really ensuring that we're hitting the value button, that we are exchanging value for time as it relates to our meetings. And so, what I've seen and what I feel is some of these best practices have slipped. And as a result of the pandemic, and we're working in an office and we went virtual, and along the swing, some of the fundamentals have slipped. And what's happening are people getting on the phone or in a boardroom, whether it's an internal or an external meeting, and they're winging it. And they're showing up, and there's a lot of small talk, but at the end of the meeting, there's really no advancement. We're not getting our audience closer to where they need to be. And so by the end of this webinar, we're going to really focus on three areas. We're going to talk about the mindset. And what mindset do we have to adopt before we even show up to this meeting? And most often, we're thinking about ourselves and our key points, our slides, our selling messages. And what I would invite you to do, and what we're going to talk about today, is the other person's perspective. So just get inside their head for a moment and what are they thinking? What do they hope to cover? What do they definitely want to avoid? And some of this might be starting from an assumption, but it allows them to feel we've considered their point of view. So the mindset of the other person, then we're going to look at a framework. So when we show up, do we have some form of roadmap or structure to keep us on track where we want to be? So we're not getting a question and then completely going off left field, going over time, missing all our agenda items. So we want to maintain control. And in order to do that, we need to have some structure. And then finally, an accountability plan really to ourselves. And are we keeping a mental scorecard or a mental note to really know about our audience? When are they leaning in? When are they leaning out? So that we can ensure that we are tailoring and aligning the stories we tell, the messaging we have, so that we are advancing, we are moving forward. At the end of the meeting, it shouldn't be a continuation. That's not a good exchange of value for time. So I always say the currency we trade now is time. And at the end of this meeting, we should be one step closer to that overall goal. And it might be a very long sales process or goal you're trying, or large, lofty goal, but incrementally, these meetings should be starting to get you closer to that. So we have to be asking ourselves in our meeting, are we exchanging value for time? And the reason this is so important is people don't have the attention span they used to, and they're not going to give you the luxury of 2 or 3 meetings to try to make it up. So we have to be hitting that value button immediately. And so again, in order to help you do that, we are launching the Summer Sales School. We're going to be delivering a number of webinars to really give you tactical plans to help you run your business, engage with your prospects more effectively. So when you think about September that's coming, back to basics, back to school, back to basics. And so when, as I mentioned, in the pandemic, we've lost kind of those best practices, especially as it relates to meetings, engaging our audience, following a structure, and advancing, getting closer to where we want to do, where we want to be. And we are the expert in this field. So we need to control the meetings. We need to guide them along. We need to be demonstrating our capability, our credibility, and, getting those next steps, not relying on them. They're looking at us to do that. So we need to be in control. We need to introduce the best practice as it relates to back to basics or back to fundamentals. So some of the things that we've just lost due to perhaps having less meetings, due to, going virtual in the office and not really knowing where we're landing in a hybrid model, but are we still really taking that consultative approach? And so the first one we talked about is that mindset. And what I would say is, before you get on that call, tap inside your audience's mind for a moment and just think, what are they thinking? When they accepted this call, why did they accept it? What are they exciting? What do they hope to get out of this call? What are their fears? What do they don't want to talk about? What do they want to avoid leaving with? Because think about it, if they're talking to you, they might be talking to 2 or 3 others like you, and immediately they're probably commoditizing themselves. So knowing that, what are things you can do or not do to really stand out and make that difference? Okay, what does a good meeting look like for them? And I would say to be engaged, to make it about them, to ask them questions, to come with a point of view, but also consider their point of view. What 3 to 5 questions will they have before coming into this conversation? And why is that so important? Well, they're coming up. There might be a reluctance. They might have been tasked to show up to this meeting. And all of a sudden, someone gets on the other phone and has a point of view or an assumption about them. They're coming to the table with something. It might be off a little bit, and that gives them the opportunity to correct you. But what it does for them is it allows them to feel heard. They think, wow, this person's actually considered, my role, my objectives, my goals, and they're answering questions that I haven't even asked yet. And so that really disarms them and allows them to start letting you into having a truly honest and authentic conversation. And only when you do that can you start moving the needle forward. Otherwise, they're closed. They're telling you what you think you want to hear because they know it's all about you. So if you could take 3 to 5 minutes and just write down a few key points about what they hope to get out of the meeting, what they want to avoid, what questions they might have, what objections or objectives, and what motivates them, what's going to want them to move forward, what's going to allow them, what information do they need to move forward. And it's not a big exercise, but it just allows us to shift our lens in which we're coming from. Because most people are all about themselves and thinking about their slides, their discount offerings, their key selling messages, their customer stories. Consider your audience. How are they showing up? How was their day? And just really tap into their brain. And I can tell you, the experience is completely different and it doesn't take a lot of work. So I would invite you to do that next time you're getting in front of your audience. And the reason is because we want to be this red ball. We want to create a different experience that when they get off that call or they leave the boardroom from having a meeting with you, they're thinking, wow, that was different. He or she made me, question myself or think about myself, my business, the way in which I'm tackling this problem in a way that no one else has. And that only comes when we can consider their point of view or get inside their brain for a moment because we're coming at it through their lens, not our lens. And when we do that, we are that red ball. So in the first few seconds when we get on the call, what are they thinking? Well, they're thinking, can I trust you? Is there warmth there? Is there a likability? Is there openness? Do I trust you in order to collaborate? And I can tell you where this starts is when they feel that you're genuinely focused on helping them and their interest is above yours. And when you can do that activity, that other person's perspective and get inside their lens, the way in which you engage, the way in which you ask questions are very geared towards them and they feel that. Then they're going to say, can I rely on you? What's your competence? Am I in good hands? Have you done this before? And that's where we really need to own the process. We need to control it to let them disarm and let go and let them feel, okay, he or she's done this before. They've got the reins. They're the expert in this field. I'm the expert in my business, but let that show. You guide them along, but you're not relying on them and putting it all on them. They want to sit back and they want to be guided. They want to be taught something. They want to learn something about themselves. So we need to show that we can do that. We need to do that very quickly. So are we following a framework? Are we showing up and thinking, well, I always deal with this persona? Or if you're a sales leader and you're having an internal meeting, this is my whole team. But everyone's different. And so we really want to know what framework are we following so it allows us to have a structure to fall back on. And when we have that, we have the freedom to really engage with our audience and check in with them. If something's not resonating, if we can read body language, we can check in and dive deeper there and break it apart to ensure that they are understanding or what's holding them back or why is there a reservation or a reluctance to move forward. And when we don't have the structure, we're inwardly focused and we're thinking, where's my next point? What am I going to talk about next? And we don't have the freedom. And so when we can follow some form of framework, we have the freedom to make it completely about them. And as I like to say, to dance in the moment, go where we need to go because we know where we are and we know where we need to be going. And so the framework I want to share with you today is this here. And what we really want to start with is that attention grabber, because think about your audience. They might have 2 or 3 meetings with, if it's a vendor situation, companies like yours, and they're just going through the motions. And all of a sudden they get on a call with you and you have an attention grabber. You have a story to start with. You have a stat, you have a quote, you have a picture of their website and a case study or something that's different. And they're thinking, wow, this is unexpected behavior. This is different. Immediately, you set the tone for an experience that has them leaning in from the get-go. And then you have to maintain that. But when you start like everyone else, it's expected. You're no different. And in their mind, they're already coming with a commoditized approach. They're thinking you're all the same. But you have the opportunity to break that when you lead with some form of an attention grabber. Okay. Then we're going to move to ACE. So A is appreciate your time. So again, we're exchanging value for time. Just thanks for being here today. Appreciate you coming on. Whatever that is, confirm the time. Okay. We always want to confirm if we've got 30 minutes, 45 minutes. And the reason here is if it's changed, if we don't have enough time, we may need to reschedule. If there's some people that can stay and some can't, we need to know who those people are. We would always be front loading the value anyways, but really ensure we get their questions asked, their feedback up front so that when they leave, they have a good sense of what the meeting was. And then E is that end goal. So what's the purpose? What's the end goal? So we're all here today so that by the end of this 30 minutes, we're in a position to do what? And let everybody know the objective, the purpose. Why are we here? But then gain alignment. Is that okay with you, John, Frank, Marcia? We're all in agreement? Okay. Is there anyone else here? Is there anything else we need to be adding to this? And the reason this is so important is that clarity up front allows you the whole meeting to be geared around this common goal, this common objective, that they're thinking, okay, what questions am I going to have that's going to help me say yes to those next steps or the end of the call when we get asked, are we ready to move forward with this purpose we've all agreed on? What questions do I have? Beyond that, I got to go back to my team and my boss. What questions are they going to have? So when we can align that purpose up front, we are inviting them and priming them to think about the questions they have, the questions their team or their superiors might have. It's really going to have an engaging conversation addressing the breadth of not only their department, but the overall organization. And when we don't do that, at the end of the meeting, when we're asking for those next steps, you're not going to get them because they didn't know the entire time where this was all going. And so the chances of them buying in, the chances of you gaining consensus and moving along as a group are very, very slight. So definitely and appreciate their time, confirm the time. What's that end goal? Why are we here? What's the purpose? At the end of this time, where should we be? And carve that out. Okay, let them know that's basically your true north that everyone is rallying up to achieve. And that's critical. Then we get into the meeting. And there's something called the rule of three. And when you think back to childhood, there's nursery rhymes, there's fairy tales, sports. We speak in threes. And the reason is it's so memorable. And so in your agenda, can you group things in threes? Can you compartmentalize things so that it's easy for your audience to go, okay, we're going to talk about these three things. For you as a speaker, you can remember three things. And it allows you again to check in. So as you're sharing your three agenda items, is there anything you'd like to add? Okay. And what group does that follow in? Again, memorable. And most people are sharing 8, 9 agenda items and you've lost them right from the get-go. So how can we use the rule of three? And so if it's a meeting, is there 3 objectives, 3 deliverables, 3 commitments? What threes can you use? And then you start on the first one. Okay. And we break it apart. Can we use some storytelling to really further elicit emotion, allow them to see themselves in the story, okay? Storytelling is very powerful. And again, when we think about connecting and building trust, this is a great way to do that. Depending on the type of meeting, can we introduce or weave in some social proofing, letting them know they're not alone. There's many others in situations like this, allow them to feel heard. Again, start disarming, knowing that, okay, it's not just us that's going through this. We want to be mindful when we're social proofing that we are using apples to apples, that it's similar industry, similar size of company, challenges are the same, that it's not this foreign entity that we're comparing them to and they're thinking we're nothing like them. Okay, so if we're going to social proof, we need to do it effectively. We always want to make it two-way. And this is why at the very beginning, when we clarify the purpose and we go around the room and we ensure that everyone is aligned, right from the get-go, we are demonstrating that this is a two-way partnership. I want to participate. You're not spectating. And what that does is it prevents them from being distracted. They're not going on their phone. They're not checking email. You've got their attention because they know, okay, this is, I'm expected to do something here. Yes, this is an active meeting that we're coming together. And I've demonstrated that from the beginning. So when you're asking questions, okay, so even the purpose, whatever they've shared, if anyone's added anything, you're keeping this little mental scorecard of who's interested in what. When you show something, when you share a story, when they say something, can you ask a question? So from what we just shared, from what we discussed, John, at the beginning of the meeting, you said it was important for your department to see this. What are your initial thoughts? Okay, get them going. If you haven't heard from something, Marsha, at the beginning of the meeting, you shared this. Any thoughts so far? Is there anything you'd like to add? Haven't heard from you in a while. And again, what this shows is you're controlling the meeting. You want to hear from everybody. And in order to drive that next step, you need to hear the voices on the table. So definitely that two-way engagement, we need to be checking in regularly, especially in the virtual environment, because if we don't, we're making it about ourselves, we're inviting them to go in other directions. They're going to go on LinkedIn, they're going to be distracted, they're going to turn off their camera and run for the coffee, whatever it is. Okay, so we definitely want to be asking insightful questions that genuinely gives us answers to, okay, I see inside their world. I see he's leaning here. I see she's leaning this way. And if we're asking close-ended questions, or does this make sense, we're not getting that feedback. And it doesn't really help anybody. Are we pausing? This is so important for ourselves as a leader. Take that 3 to 5 seconds, especially in the virtual world. You can put yourself on mute. You can find little ways to pause to allow your audience, especially after you've asked a question, to allow your audience to answer. Because sometimes it's the first time they've heard the information you're sharing and they just need a moment to process it, to digest it, to think about it. And so pause. And you could even say, I'm just going to pause here for a moment and let this sink in. Just going to pause here. Let them know you're doing it, but definitely pause for effect leading up to something, after something. And even I would say, if you're asking a question, you say, any questions? You're not going to get a question. Okay, so really point it from what I just shared there on the deliverables, on the feature, whatever it is. What questions do you have as it relates to this? And really point it, okay? Because a vague question will yield a vague answer or most likely no answer, okay? So we definitely want to pause after we've dropped a huge nugget, before we drop a nugget, to really allow things to settle in. And then we wrap up and we say the end goal. So we bring it back to where we started. The beginning of the meeting, we all agreed the objective, the purpose was this. We want to go around and are we there now? Are we ready to move forward to those next steps, whatever they were? And the beauty is here, it's no surprise. You've told them at the beginning of the meeting where you want to be taking them. You've all agreed. And I would even use the word, we all agreed here, because you went around and you got agreement that this is where we want to be. You've invited them to add anything else. So there's no surprises. So are we ready to do that? And you're really creating that locking key that allows you to advance because you've kept a tight meeting. You've checked it along the way. You've told them where you're going to take them. And now you're taking them there. And the beauty of the rule of 3 is you're creating this situational awareness that allows them to know where they are in the meeting, in their world of whatever you're speaking about. And they can do that by the rule of 3, but it also allows you to stay on track. Okay. So it allows you to have that clear purpose, but then have that end goal. And then I would say, once you get agreement that, yes, these are the next steps, we're ready to move forward because we've all agreed on them. The meeting, the questions we've asked, the engagement, the story, the social proving has all supported us in moving to those next steps. Okay. So that call to action is those next steps. If it's another meeting, can we get our calendars out? Can we book it? I'm just going to send you the invite now. If you just want to take a second, I'll just pause for a moment. You can go ahead and accept it. You have access to the people right now. Use it. Okay. If it's booking a demo, whatever it is, if it's getting you have to get access to their database is something, get that next step out there right now. We've asked questions and answers as we've went. We definitely want that two-way engagement. But here's a chance, from what we shared, and a quick summary from what we shared about A, B, and C, what final questions do you have? And sometimes there's none here because you've done such a great job throughout weaving in questions that you've addressed them as they go. And that's critical because people are not going to hold their questions and they're going to feel unheard and they're probably just going to check out. And so I would say if there's something here you really want to share and no one's asking it, plant a question. So a lot of times when we're at this stage and, people we're considering those next steps and they're always asking, what happens here? And so you might be thinking that yourselves and then go into it. Okay. So if there's no questions, always have 2 to 3 questions that you can plant. And what that does is it educates them, but it primes them to go, oh, I need to be asking this. So help them out. tee it up a little bit, okay? And then finally the summary, okay? So the reason we have the summary at the end is we want the last message, okay? We want to leave them. What is that final message we want to leave them with? And that's where we can summarize, okay? If we've opened it up to questions at the end, someone might ask a question that exposes something that leaves a negative feel to the meeting, and that's the feeling they leave with. So let's reverse it. Let's get the questions weaved out through in, final questions at the end, and then summarize and let them know before we summarize, and we're to open it up for some questions. So they know the summary's coming next. Okay, so that's the framework we can follow to really ensure that we're engaging with our audience, we're making it two-way, and that we are achieving a goal. Here's the purpose, here's everything that's going to help us achieve it. And then at the end, did we achieve it, and are we ready to lock those next steps in place? So it really allows advancement, and that's what we're after here, okay? So we have to be asking ourselves, are we connecting the dots for our prospects or our audience, whoever we're having the meeting with? And the type of questions we ask, the next steps we have are all going to help them do this, because we really want to help them see the path forward, help them see around the corner. And this is sometimes why people are reluctant to move forward, because they just see what's in front of them. Our job is to help them see around the corner, answer questions they don't even have yet. And when we can do that, we are that entrusted advisor. We are that consultant, that safe place that allows them to see the path forward and with us. And you have to ask yourself, have best practices slipped? And if they have, we can only move forward. We can't look back. Okay. So what I would say in terms of a summary, consider the other person's perspective. So what is the mindset that they're coming in with? You know, what 3 to 5 questions do they have? What do they want to hope? What do they hope to get out of the call? What do they want to avoid? What can we be doing before the meeting, during the meeting, and after the meeting? So really considering where they are in their business, what opportunities are going on, what triggers are going on after. Was there anybody not on the meeting that we can send a video to, timestamp it, and really focus and say, hey, risk management, you want to look at 12:40 to 13:40, we talk about this. CFO, you want to look at minute 4, and really get reach and breadth and help this message grow within the organization. And finally, when we can do all this and really be considerate of our audience, you're creating an experience for them that's going to be memorable, that's going to invite them to think about themselves, their business in a different way. Teach them something about themselves. That's what we want. We want to be different. If they're thinking, oh, they're similar to the other group, we haven't differentiated ourselves. So part of that is just having that attention grabber and coming at it from a creative, authentic lens to create the experience that we're looking for. So what I would urge you to do is think about what's one change that I can add to my meeting that's going to help me engage my audience, make them feel like they're the only ones in the room, that I consider their point of view, that my ultimate goal is to help them achieve their goal and move forward. And finally, when I can engage them, when I can follow a framework, when I have the freedom to truly check in with them and answer their questions, ask questions, listen to the unspoken and the spoken, I'm going to create an experience that's completely different from anybody else. And that's going to be memorable. And that's the goal. So hope you found this helpful. Let us know what one thing you've changed and the results you've experienced from it. And enjoy the rest of your summer. And thanks for watching.